Hello, everybody. This is Noah and John, and we are with UrbanDigs. And today, Johnny, we are talking Manhattan, and we got a great guest today. I am honored to have Michelle.Griffith over at Elliman. First off, I'm amazed at your resume here. You're by yourself. You are the main agent, and you've done over about a decade, about 1.5 billion with a B in sales, luxury sales to date, constantly ranked in the top of the top at firms that she's at now and in the past. You get to see her maybe on these shows, Million Dollar Listing, the Top Realtors, NBC's Open House, all these different shows because she's awesome, Johnny.
Yeah.
And we got her for 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I don't know how she does it. I don't know if it's like a Harry Potter or those time turner things where
she's
she
can
going to
tell
go back
us.
And do. It's just amazing. So I'm looking forward to the secret of success here.
Me too. And Michelle, thank you for being on the show. And we're going to ask you right off the bat. This is our first question we always ask guests because we need boots on the ground information. What is going on in the state of the New York City market today?
First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm huge fans of both of you. So if we're talking about the New York City real estate market, if there was one word I would use to describe it, it's resilient. They always say don't bet against New York, and that's definitely the case. Now, there's three key indicators that I'm constantly analyzing to talk about the market. The first one is contract signed activity. Now, the reason why this is important is it's really going to help us understand the buyer's mindset because we're looking at real-time data. Now, if we look at the numbers for January of this year and we compare it to last year, that number's up about 5%. The second indicator is price negotiability. Now, whereas we talked about the buyer, price negotiability really helps us understand where the seller is at. What we're finding is that that number is up about 6%. So in order to be a seller in this market, you have to be strategic, you have to be nuanced, and that's really sort of a nice way of saying you have to be realistic on price. And the third indicator is inventory. And we're seeing this across the board. There is tightened inventory in all markets, but especially those neighborhoods where families are raising kids, sending them to great public schools. They want to be walking distance to all the private schools. So in especially neighborhoods like Tribeca and the Upper East Side, it's helping to keep prices up because inventory is so tight.
Interesting.
Awesome.
So look, Michelle, I mean, you do an amazing amount of deals and it's awesome. And the great thing about it is you see the deal flow across the entire, Manhattan, Brooklyn, high end, low end. I mean, you really do see it all. So I'm curious, you mentioned strategy and strategic pricing. I'd love to dig into that. And how do you price something in today's market, with that idea that these neighborhoods are different?
Absolutely. So again, location, location, location. So every seller, every property, it's going to have a bit of a nuanced story. But what I say to my agents and a lot of the agents at DE is when we have these pricing conversations, think about it a little bit like a scale. So you have time on one side and you have price on the other. So when I have meetings with my clients, we always have a range. And if the seller has more time to test the market, we can go on at the higher end of the range. If they don't have a lot of time, then you need to be a little bit more aggressive when pricing a space. Another thing I like to touch on with agents is we're doing so much as an agent, but if you're not communicating this to the seller, then they have absolutely no idea what you're doing. So it's extremely important that you're constantly giving them feedback. We do a bi-weekly report. We touch on PR efforts, marketing efforts, social media exposure, of course, client feedback, but it's also really important that any relevant comps are going to be listed, right? You normally can't go to a seller and say, we need you to lower the price, but when they can see that X, Y, and Z, is more renovated and that's trading, then that's going to help to communicate in a softer way by really driving the data. And then that'll sort of help you with sellers get to where the pricing needs to be.
I love that answer, Michelle. If I could just follow up real quick on the strategic pricing and over communicating with your clients. Is there any special way that you deal with that one personality type where no matter what you do, what data you present, what you tell them, they still are a little bit aspirational, maybe a little bit in denial, and they just have to see it for themselves. What do you tell them during that conversation, and how do you get them to do something that you need them to do later on?
Noah, I never have those types of clients.
Oh, right.
That's
See you
the magic.
later. It's
That's
not
the
worth the
magic.
time. Is that the answer? That may be the answer.
It's all
Scare
about
them.
selection.
You just
I
walk
love
away.
it.
You know,
Right.
in all fairness, you know, this is probably most of my clients in Manhattan. And again, it's tough because the market's in a place right now where even if you look at some of the data, you would think the pricing is here, but then the bids are coming in significantly lower, right? So these are
Yeah.
all very truthful, difficult conversations that we're having with sellers. So when I go into that exact type of situation, I make sure that we have a plan in place. Now, again, if this is a listing that I want, right? So I'm happy to test at a certain price, but if 30 days in, there's no clients coming in the door, we definitely don't have a bid. And the only thing that I actually have coming in are brokers that were begging to come in and preview the listing to try to increase exposure. So I like to have those conversations very early on and make sure it's clear that if that's the situation 30 days in, then we're going to have a price correction to this number. So again, so much of this is just going in knowing, okay, this is what you want. That's totally fine. We'll test it. And 30 days into it, we may need to make an adjustment. But I say this all the time. If you're going into a pitch and you know where the numbers need to be, and there is absolutely no way the seller's going to get the price that they want, and everyone's going to be disappointed, it is okay to walk away and be the second broker. You know, and again, I'm not ashamed to say this, but in 2025, we were losing a lot of listings, and where truly our success came was being the second broker on so many listings. We had more data points. We had a seller who was more realistic. You know, it was a tough market. The only way I can describe 2025 is you had sellers here and you had buyers down here, and it was really hard to get to a meeting of the minds. Sellers started to soften in Q4 of 2025. But again, it was so much better to be the second or third broker entering in these situations. So I never want agents to fear if you lose a listing that, you know, oh my God, it's doomsday.
End of the world. Right.
It's not.
Well, that's a great point. And 2025 was, for lack of a better word, it's a broker's market, which makes it sound like it's great for brokers. But no, it's really just bringing these sides together. You know, you're pulling the hair on one side, pulling the fingernails on the other. You got to get them in the middle. But you bring up an amazing point, Michelle, which is, I mean, look, from what you've done, your history, you've got the media on one side, and you're also staring down the black hole of a listing that has no bids. How do you maintain sanity in a market like 2025 when it's all about bridging that gap?
It's over communication. This is where you have to communicate every aspect that you and the members on your team are doing. It's truly the only case. And again, you cannot lead as a broker with it's price, it's price, it's price. You just cannot lead with that. So you really have to go in all of your efforts. And again, we've got this report that we've really built so that nothing's falling through the cracks. You know, all the marketing opportunities, the events that we're having at certain listings, PR, that's really been a game changer for myself and for my listings. Getting the listings and the clients, if they want as much exposure as we possibly can, to get the highest price for the listing. And so it's over communicating. And again, sometimes you get to a point where it's just not the right fit. And it may not be that the personalities are not the right fit, but that the seller is just not where they need to be to transact right now in this market. And that's also okay too. We have a lot of clients who had condos and they just weren't happy where the pricing was, and we shifted and we were able to rent it, you know, for significantly higher numbers than we've seen in the past on the rental side. So I think it's also just knowing when you need to transition, when you need to be strategic, and when you need to be creative.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have mastered your craft in this business. It's just coming out. I can sense it. And I want to talk a little bit about recovering from the downsides of this business, from the reality of being an agent. I mean, yeah, on one side, you might watch these shows and you might think, oh, I could just hang around with some people and make a $20 million deal and get this commission. It's just la, la, la. But let's talk about the reality of the New York City business and the hardships that a lot of us face daily. How do how do you manage and recover from that?
You know, it's really mindset. It's all about mindset. And you have to look at this business as a marathon, not as a sprint. And any top agent, we could put together the names of 5 top agents and we could put them on a pedestal. And I think a lot of brokers who are just entering the market think this way. But those top 5 brokers have lost more deals, more clients, more buyers, more sellers than anyone else. And so the real question here is, how do you move forward from that? And that's how you define an agent and a really successful agent. How do you build that resiliency muscle? And, you know, this happens to all of us. I have a story for you guys. This was probably when I started off in the business. This is maybe 12, 15 years ago. And I had a really good friend of mine, and he said, "You're the only agent I want to list this apartment." And I said, "Okay, great." We listed the apartment. Let's say he wanted 3 million. We got 3.25. Everything went beautifully with the listing. And then I'm getting already sending him off market, on market, everything for the buy side. And it was crickets. And I thought, this is awfully weird. And then after a couple of weeks had gone by, I knew there was a problem. I then get the dreaded call, and I knew immediately from his voice this was not going to go the way that I wanted. And he simply said to me, "You're an amazing listing broker, but you're not really a buyer's broker." And I thought, what's he talking about? Now, it stung. Of course it did, right? And I'm sure I had a pity party for myself for maybe 24 hours. But then I really thought, why does he think that? Why is that his perception? And I analyzed my own business. I have a lot of listings. I do a lot of new dev. I work with a lot of buyers, but that wasn't what I was portraying. So what was going to be my shift? So you better believe my newsletter talked about every new development and had stories about working with buyers. My social media, all my stories were this new development on the Upper East Side. This is what's happening in Tribeca on the buy side. And then I had testimonials from buyers. So again, this is a marathon. This isn't a sprint. And instead of getting upset and being on the defense about something that happens like that, which really, I almost have to thank him because it really shifted my perspective and brought me back to where's my business coming from? What is the perception of my business? And then how do I want to shift it, into a direction where I can kind of poke through those holes. So he really had me think about things quite differently.
Yeah, and I loved there's a lesson here also in that it's all content, using content and your network, right? You're engaging them with education, you're giving them what they want to know, and then you're taking your success stories and bundling that in. This simple formula of this independent, neutral content, education of what's going on so that these buyers know what's happening in the market that they're buying into. And then the success stories on the other success sells. So, I mean, I just wanted to point those two things out because UrbanDigs, everything we're doing is a similar kind of method with the content and using success stories. And that's how we grow. Just follow the formula. It makes sense. A lot of agents are looking too deep and analyzing too deep. It's simplicity.
But that's exactly what it is. And I think a lot of people can get dizzy with the data. They can get dizzy with social media. They can get dizzy with a lot of other elements. But
tunnel vision, start looking over here, you miss over there. Right.
That's it. And really sort of simplify it and come up with the formula that makes sense for you. And again, it is just you keep going. I mean, that's really, when I look at all the successful agents and the people in this business that I really look up to, that's it. It's being resilient and continuing to go, to grow, and to evolve. So you hit the nail on the head.
Love it.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I know that's great. So Michelle, I want to dig into the marathon aspect, the resilience aspect, because, I see you here and I think you do an amazing job, but I can't seem to see the army of robots and clones behind you that help you scale that mountain. And I'm wondering, since you're a solo agent, I mean, how do you do it? How do you stay balanced? How do you wear all those hats at the same time and still be you?
This is very important. As you're growing your business, you simply have to understand about you personally, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, and how do you play on those strengths? And for example, where are you going to spend your time? So I don't want to manage a big team, because what I realized very early on is that's not what I enjoy. I don't enjoy managing all of these brokers. I love being with clients. I love solving those problems and being front facing. So I very quickly made my list, and I knew I could see very easily what were the things that I needed to outsource. So whether you're running a team or whether you're a single agent, there's a lot of things you can outsource. All the marketing, you can outsource the public relations. I have two gals that work with me who are absolutely fantastic, and we do the exact same thing. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What do they want to do on the team? What don't they want to do? So initially, and they both have their broker's license, one of them said to me, I don't want to be a broker. I don't want to show on the weekends. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And I think initially my thought was, oh boy, okay, what are we going to do? But then very quickly, we're going to shift you into the director of operations. And that was a really big key thing that has helped to define the team, because she can hold the fort down while myself and the other agent are running around doing showings, meeting with clients. So part of this naturally evolves, but don't be afraid to outsource certain things. There are virtual assistants. There are people that can help with board packages. You can hire an outside marketing company. You can hire a publicist. You can hire someone to help you with your social media. So each agent has to really say, what am I good at? And what do I want to do? And then how am I going to outsource the things that I'm not good at, or the things that are not a good use of my time? So to answer your question, I am extremely efficient.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you figured out the highest and best use of you, and figure out, let me get help, right? Let me find other who's to help do all these other things. John, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's honestly, that's sometimes the hardest job, is to figure out, all right, here's what I'm good at, and let me focus on that and bring in help. I mean, sometimes that is, and I mean, I'm speaking for Noah and I, sometimes that's our biggest stumbling block, is realizing like we shouldn't be doing some of these tasks. It still is.
It's just not a good use of your time. And that's what it is. And I think all of us who are running businesses, right, there's an element where we're a control freak. And I think that that's normal, right? And we want to hold on to that. But as you start to realize, okay, that's not a good use of my time, and you can give those responsibilities to someone else, you're really just going to see how you can elevate where you are. And I think that's really the goal of an agent, whether you're an individual or you're running a team, is to elevate the business and the client experience.
Absolutely. And John's the control freak of this group right over here. So I mean,
I am white knuckle.
But everyone, listen, Michelle, I you just laid out all of the hard things that all of us agents out there that are dealing with and trying to grow a business. But I mean, on top of that, you layer in being a working mom and all the other duties that women have to deal with, right? Especially young working moms. And that's just another layer on top of everything. So if I could just ask, I know this is dear to your heart, how do you do it? How do you deal with that?
I think you have to go into it knowing that nothing is perfect, right? It's all going to be a little bit messy, and that's part of the journey. And I think a lot of this goes back into the mindset that we were discussing. So having the right mindset, knowing that things are always going to be a little bit messy, and then outsourcing the things that you need to. So I'm a very present mom, and that's intentional, and that's extremely important to me. And at the same time, I never took maternity leave. I'm a little bit of the opposite, where when the kids were younger, of course they need someone who's nurturing and caring for them. But what I found is that as my kids, oh, hold on, guys, I lost my earbud.
Sure, okay. No problem. This is what I love about the show. It's real. Wait.
There we go.
Is now back in.
All right,
so
good.
what I realized,
even that whole process was efficient. Unbelievable.
Michelle's one of the one. I only need one.
I could just keep going with one. Can you hear me?
I know.
There you go.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So what I realized for me and my kids is that the older they get, so now they're 10 and 14, they actually need me more, and they need me to be present more. But again, I sort of use the same formula because it helps me in my head, right? So on certain things I outsource, certain things I do, right? If I can connect with my kids when they get out of school, right? Like what's that most important hour? And then,
Right.
they're with a babysitter and they go off to activities, or my daughter who's older, she goes on and she studies. But what are those moments of connection? So I think being a working mom, I really have to prioritize what's important to me in parenting. And then those are non-negotiables for me. Those are the moments that I need to be with the kids. And then, sleep is probably the one thing that I need a little bit more of, right? So then, like, once things are settled with the kids, and then I go back to work, right? We've got comp reports and all these different things that we need to do, but it's prioritizing those moments that are really important for connection, and then outsourcing what I need to from a job perspective, and then, even from a parenting perspective, because it's less important. So I think that's the formula that's really helped me. But then also, too, I always think about community, and that's what's really important. So I think for a lot of those agents, to who's your community, and make sure that you really strengthen that. So I know for me, I've got a really strong female community at work, and that has been extremely important. So I would say community, making sure that you have mentors in whatever field you're in, that's also extremely important. And then the last thing, which I'm not great at, but making sure I put myself back on the schedule, whether it's working out, that's definitely, has not been my priority, but just creating that own mind space for myself. And that's what I'm working on. I haven't gotten there yet. And I'm sure my trainer, who 10 years later, I'm still not fit, is probably like, don't act like you work out, because it's true. I'm not great at that, but I'm trying to put myself back on the schedule to just clear my mind a bit more, because at
Personal
the end of
wellness.
it, you have to have personal wellness, you have to have fun in what you do. So these are all the
Yeah.
things that I'm just making sure I bring back into my headspace, because I definitely, so many times prioritize my kids or my clients for sure more than myself.
Otherwise you'll burn out or
Yeah.
implode,
Yes.
as Matthew McConaughey said once.
Spontaneous combustion.
That's right.
So this is a great segue. And Michelle, one of the joys of doing this program is seeing the agents that come on, and everybody has their own way of doing business, and they're all amazingly well-rounded. No one has ever come in this. I don't think we've had anybody who comes from a real estate family, studied real estate, and is just all real estate. There's no one who's just in that silo for their entire life. Everyone brings all of these different facets to this industry, and it's really amazing. And with that, I want to ask you, Michelle, because you are one of the more well-rounded folks we've had on this, and it's been a really interesting discussion. And I would love to know, if you had to go back in time and talk to your younger self starting in this industry, what is the one strategic success tip you would pass on to yourself or to agents looking to get to the next level?
I would say, don't wait for things to be perfect. So many times agents are like, well, I'm not ready for this, or, oh, I'm not ready for that. Even though I could compare this to parenting, I'm not ready to be a parent. You have to understand that it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be the perfect situation. You're never going to have the perfect amount of time. You're never going to have the perfect client. You've got to just jump in, and there is going to be an element of learning on the go. That's just part of it. But I have had so many conversations with friends, so many conversations with people who are wanting to get into the business, and they're all waiting for it to be perfect. It will never be perfect. Sometimes you've just got to dive right in.
Perfect is the enemy of the good. I love it.
That's it.
It's the perfect ending. Listen, I got to tell you, you speak so wonderfully, and it just, the confidence comes out. Again, I feel like you're mastering your craft right in front of everyone's eyes, and you've really achieved an incredible success. Respect for what you do. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us. Michelle Griffith over at Elliman. That is John Walkup. I am Noah Rosenblatt. This has been Talking Manhattan, and we will catch you next time. Cheers, everybody.
Bye.